what's going on today, YouTube? Welcome back to your favorite cyclist YouTube channel. This week, we're installing some chain tensioners on my daughter's BMX race bike. But before we get into today's video, if you are new to my channel, make sure you head down below, hit that subscribe button for me. If you already are subscribed, make sure you hit that bell icon right next to that. That way you get notified every time I upload. That way you don't miss any of this awesome cycling content we got on this channel. So right behind me, we got my daughter's new BMX race bike here. This is her Mongoose Title Micro is what she has here. And I'll go into BMX race bikes and how that all works in a few videos from now. But right now we're working on getting her bike ready so she can learn and practice on this bike versus our balance bike on the track. So one of the things we picked up for her bike are these chain tensioners here. These are the Box 3 chain tensioners, and they pretty much are going to help tension the chain on the bike, keep that tension there all the time. So right now this is just a bolt-on wheel on the rear. So it just has nuts on each side that hold it on just like you would see on a standard wheel. The problem with these is they're geared so high that you're putting a lot of pressure on that rear wheel and on the rear cog that a lot of times the rear wheel will slide forward as you put pressure on it. So the big deal with these guys is to hold that rear wheel back, keep that chain tension on, even when you're booking it around the track. So we're going to go ahead and move back there. We're going to go ahead and show you guys how to install these. Should be a pretty simple task. I've actually never installed them before, so let's go back to the back of the bike and let's see if we can get these installed and working like they should.
So my microphone on my camera decided to stop working, but we're going to explain how to get all this done so that you can change tensioners on your bike. So if you go ahead and look at the back of the bike where I'm kind of pointing right now, you can see that the wheel has actually slid forward and back a few times. You can see the paint is chipped off of the aluminum frame. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to take these out of the packaging here. And what we're going to do, we're going to get these installed on here. It's going to be super simple. It makes a huge difference in holding that wheel back. So there's the chain tensioner right here. You can see it's kind of two pieces. So one piece, the piece in the front, it's going to slide right into the track that the dropout is. So it's going to slide right in place underneath the axle nut. And the other piece that I'm holding right there is going to go on the back of the bike, on the back of the dropout. Actually it pulls the wheel back towards the back of the bike. So we need both those pieces there, and that's going to make sure it's nice and tight, and we can adjust it with that nut on the back and make sure it's actually pointed back to the right tension and adjust it side to side from there. So first thing we got to do, we got a 15 millimeter. We're going to take off our axle nut right here. Should be pretty tight just because there wasn't a chain tensioner there. Get that all off. We're going to move that nut all the way off of the axle. Once we have that all the way off, you can see there's a washer underneath. That washer you're going to get rid of. You don't want that. Your chain tensioner is going to go right in place that and act as that washer to hold the wheel in place. So get rid of that washer. That piece, you're going to slide it right over your axle, just like so. Make sure it slots into the dropout. That's what you're going to want to do. Make sure it's positioned properly and it's pointing straight back on the wheel versus at a weird angle. Once you have that, these have a 10 millimeter nut in the back. You're going to want to use like a deep socket or like a wrench for this. Make sure it can actually reach onto there. But before we tighten that up, we're going to make sure we put our axle nut back on. So 15 millimeter, we're just going to tighten it, hand tighten. That way we can actually use the 10 millimeter on the ratchet to pull the axle back and tighten that up before we fully tighten the axle nut. And it is kind of a long one, so as you're tightening this the first time, you kind of want to pay attention to how far you're tightening this, make sure it actually goes to the right lane. That way you can kind of gauge your tightness of the chain based on there. And with this, you do just want to do it one at a time. You don't want to do both the axle nuts at the same time. Do one at a time, that way your chain kind of stays in the correct tension. You're not going to do it fighting your wheel back and forth. It's just easier to do it this way. And as you can see, we're kind of checking the chain tension, make sure it's nice and tight, and it feels nice and tight. We're going to pedal through, make sure it feels good all the way around the whole rotation. Make sure it's not loose in certain areas, make sure everything's looking good. Right here, I'm noticing that it's getting a little close. The tensioner part in the back is getting a little close to the freewheel, which I thought was kind of odd. I actually found out later the freewheel is actually unscrewing itself. Totally different in this video, but that's kind of what was going on. I actually fixing that, so that's all set now. It fits great. And then once you have your tension done on your chain, you're going to tighten that 15 millimeter nut. You want to tighten that thing as much as you can because you don't want that to slip or to come off. You want that as tight as you possibly can get it. Moving on to the other side, it's going to be pretty much the same process. Was 15 millimeter. We'll take off our axle nut here. Should be a lot simpler since we've already done this on one side. So this is going to be the easier one. This one you can actually see pretty badly how the axle had slipped at some point a bunch and chipped a bunch of the paint off. You can see all the silver on there. So that silver is all the paint being chipped off. You can see it's back and forth on there from the axle slit essentially, rip the paint off. So we'll get the chain tensioner back into place here, twist this the correct way so the thin part is towards the inside and the thicker part's towards the outside. Get the axle nut back on to hold it in place, just hand tighten that on there. Make sure it's all in the dropout slot like it's supposed to be. Okay, so at this size, we got it kind of tight, snugged up on the back of the tensioner. What you want to make sure with this side is that you're actually centering the wheel into the frame. So now that both are on there, you can actually tension each side individually to get the wheel to pull one way or the other. So you want to make sure that it's centered in the frame, centered in the brakes. In my case, I have the brakes disconnected because we're replacing the brakes on this bike anyways. So I have that disconnected. We're mainly looking at the frame here and trying to get that wheel centered as close as we can within the chain stays. And this is kind of a little bit tougher, harder of a part here. Just make sure everything's nice and tight. We're going to go ahead and loosen up the axle nut on the other side again, just because I noticed it was off a little bit towards that side. And I couldn't get it to slide back that way without losing tension, without over tensioning the chain. So we can go ahead and loosen that side up, and we're going to take a look at what we got. And we're going to start adjusting those chain tensioners to get that wheel centered in the frame as best as we can. And after going back and forth on those chain tensioners for a little bit, we're going to go ahead and spin the wheel here, make sure it clears everything that it's supposed to. Everything's looking good, making sure those chain tensioners are nice and tight against the back of the frame. And we'll go ahead and spin it, make sure it's all feeling good. Chain tension feels nice still. And that everything clears and is spinning freely and not hitting the frame. Make sure it's centered really good. And once you have that all set, we'll switch back to our 15mm and we'll tighten up our axle nuts from there. And make sure those are nice and tight.
That's how you go ahead and install chain tensioners on your bike. Make sure your chain is tight all the time while you're riding, no matter how much pressure you're putting down. They're super nice to have, especially on a single speed bike with horizontal dropouts. If the wheel is going to move, it's nice just to have them. Now, some frames have them built in, like my dirt jumper has chain tensioners built into the frame already. But in the case of this bike, in the case of a lot of BMX bikes and a lot of single speed bikes like this, they don't have anything like that. So pick yourself up some of these box 3 chain tensioners here. Super nice, they work really good, and they're really affordable for pretty much anybody to put on their bike. So hopefully you guys learned something or at least enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Appreciate the support. As always, all the products I use in today's video are going to be in my description down below, so you guys can check them out for yourselves. If you have any comments or questions, let me know down in the comment section below. Love talking to you guys, love answering any questions you guys have, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching today.